Okay, so you know that feeling you get right when you grab a can of Coke, like that familiar red can, and you just expect that same refreshing taste every time.
Yeah.
It's like a guarantee, right?
It's like, yeah, like the baseline you expect, right?
Yeah,
Especially with a product with such a strong brand and history.
totally. And what happens if that expectation is kind of like interrupted suddenly?
Uh-oh.
And that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
Okay.
A recent recall of Coca-Cola Classic 12 packs.
A recall, I mean, something so common that's kind of interesting.
It is, we've been looking into a USA Today report that details what the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, has
Uh,
been doing about a specific batch of Coke. And the reason why is, get this, the potential that there's a foreign object in there.
Wait, a foreign object in a sealed can?
I know. So before you go check every can in your fridge, it's important to understand the scale of this.
Okay.
It wasn't everywhere.
Okay, so how bad is it?
We're talking about 864 cases of 12 packs of Coca-Cola Classic, the 12-ounce cans.
Hmm.
So that's a lot of cans,
Yeah.
but a very small fraction of all the Coke they make.
So a relatively small incident then.
Yeah, so what was the big concern that caused all this? What were they maybe finding in these cans?
Yeah, what's going on?
Well, this is where it gets a little unsettling to think about.
Okay.
There might be plastic inside the cans.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that you're going for that refreshing Coke and you find plastic.
That's not good. Not what you expect at all. So what does the FDA actually do in this situation?
Good question. Well, in this case, they put out a public notice about the recall. And speaking of recall, this is a Class 2 recall now, if you're listening. That may sound confusing, so let's break it down.
Yeah.
Class 2, according to the FDA, means that if you're exposed to this product, there could be some temporary or reversible health problems.
Okay.
But serious health problems are unlikely.
So they're not expecting anything too severe.
Exactly. And thankfully, at the time of the report, there were no reported injuries or illnesses.
Okay, that's good to hear. So this is a contained issue so far, but
Yeah.
where was this Coke being sold?
This recall was just in 2 states,
Okay.
Illinois and Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
if you don't live in those states, it's probably not something to worry about.
Okay, good to know. Do we know who the distributor was in those states?
The distributor for those 12 packs was Reyes Coca-Cola Bottling, LLC, specifically the Milwaukee branch.
Okay, so it seems like a pretty localized issue. And what did Reyes Coca-Cola Bottling say about all this? Did they respond?
They actually initiated this recall themselves.
Oh, wow.
It was voluntary, so they chose to do it. And in their official statement, they said that these cases didn't meet their high-quality standards.
So they're really on top of it. That's good.
It seems like they're really serious about their quality and taking action instead of waiting for someone to tell them to.
And that's what you want to see from companies you trust.
For sure.
Hmm.
So if you're listening in Illinois or Wisconsin and you recently bought some 12 packs of Coca-Cola Classic,
Yeah.
what should you do?
Yeah, especially because the report didn't mention any specific product codes to look out for.
That's a great point because we don't have those codes. The best thing to do is check the official websites.
Okay.
Start with either Reyes Coca-Cola Bottling or the main Coca-Cola website
Yeah.
that might have recall notices and more details. And the FDA also has a recall page. That's always a good place to check for updates on all sorts of products.
A quick check there should give you some peace of mind.
Definitely. So to summarize, we're looking at a small number of Coca-Cola Classic 12 packs, the 12-ounce ones, and they were only in Illinois and Wisconsin. The recall is because there might be plastic in the cans. It's a Class 2 recall, which means there's a low chance of serious problems, and thankfully, no one's reported getting sick, and the bottling company started the recall on their own.
That's a great rundown.
It's kind of wild,
Yeah.
right? You just assume that can is going to be perfect.
Yeah, you don't think about it.
It makes you think about all the steps that go into making and selling, even just a can of Coke, the raw materials, the making of the can itself, the filling the sealing, then putting them in the packs, the trucks to get them to stores.
It's a whole process.
How many checks and things must happen to make sure one can is okay before you get it?
That's a good question. We just take the final product for granted. You know, we rarely think about all the stuff happening behind the scenes to make it safe and consistent. So what kinds of things do you think they do to prevent something like this from happening?
Well, I imagine they have machines that can tell if something is wrong during the filling and sealing stages.
Right.
Maybe like cameras or pressure checks, all sorts of high-tech stuff, and maybe even people looking at it along the way and then packing them into those 12 packs is another step.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder where something could go wrong.
And, you know, when something like this happens, companies take a deep dive into what they're doing to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Right.
It's a never-ending cycle of improving, especially with food and beverages, you know? So this is a small thing, but it shows how even with good systems, mistakes can happen.
Yeah, what does that say about the systems we rely on for all the things we buy?
We just trust that the stuff we buy from food to everything else has been checked really well. And this recall is like a little reminder that even with big companies and rules, things can slip through the cracks. It shows how complex things are. Even for simple things we don't really think about, makes you wonder about everything else on the shelves and how it got there.
For sure, it definitely makes you look at things differently.
Absolutely.
This has been a really interesting deep dive into something that seems small, but actually makes you think about bigger things.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking it through with me.
It's always good to think about where our stuff comes from.
And for you listening, as you grab something from the grocery store, maybe think about the journey it took to get there.
Huh.
It's a big world of factories and trucks and checks all happening to make sure we get what we expect. It's a whole new way to see things, right?
It is, for sure.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. See you next time.